My mom was diagnosed with latent stage colorectal cancer when I was in middle school, which was a long time ago now. I would have been 12 or 13, one of those awkward years. And I remember I was at Linda Joe Middle School in Mansfield, Texas. We had been living there for a little bit. We moved a lot whenever I was younger, so I didn't know when I could necessarily settle into a place. But I think that's when I was finally starting to feel settled, because we moved there when I was in 4th grade, and that's the longest that I can remember us staying in a place. So I remember I was kind of getting comfortable, but also, being an awkward middle school kid. That's when I first started doing theater. I, at the time, wanted to emulate what my cousin Jillian in New York, she did theater, and I looked up to her like no other. I thought, Jillian can do no wrong. She is, God's gift to man. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I obviously want to be exactly like her, so I'm going to be an actress, which I followed-ish. I had a few close friends, but I don't know, middle school's that awkward time when it's you're trying to fit in with whoever you think is the coolest group, and trying not to seem too nerdy. But at some point, looking back, I think I must have realized that I was the nerdy one that people were trying to disassociate from a little bit, because my friends would they started hanging out with other people, which kind of affected, because it's it was a rough time. I don't think I completely grasped at the time what it was that we were about to go through whenever I was told my mom had cancer. Because that's weird, they say that in movies, but that doesn't actually happen to people. And that kind of set the stage, thinking back on it now, having this realization in front of a camera, which is fun. I didn't necessarily have a lot of people to go to at the time. First, learning that my mom had cancer was weird. I mean, you don't expect to hear that in your life. I mean, everyone ends up touched by cancer in some way through relatives or friends, but I don't know, just hearing it that close, especially because, I don't know, I had this concept of, I knew that everyone ends up being affected in some way by cancer, but I had a grandma who had a scare with cancer, and an aunt that had a scare with cancer. And so I thought, okay, that was going to be my experience with it, is they almost had it. But then it turned out to be benign. And so actually hearing that it was a real thing, I feel like I didn't necessarily take it as hard as I should have at first. Maybe it was just, it was surreal. It wasn't actually happening. Or maybe, my mom has awful luck with health. She's a walking medical emergency, is what I like to joke about. She's been in the ICU several times, had been before then, just from she had, one time she had a surgery, and it was on her, she had a surgery and it affected her stomach, and something tore or ripped, and they're really concerned that her stomach acid was going to get into the rest of her body, which is bad for obvious reasons. So she was in the ICU for a while for that one. So at that point, I don't know, I'd seen her go through things that's oh yeah, your mom's really sick, and yeah, sure she is, she's been there, done that. She goes to the hospital for a couple of weeks, and then she comes back and she's perfectly fine. So I don't think I really realized the long-term effect that this was going to end up having on her and on everyone that had to watch her go through it. I don't know, it's weird to think of how I coped with it at the time, because I don't know, I was so caught up in the day-to-day with just, okay, this is our new stasis, this is where we are, this is how this is what life is right now. And so we were so focused on the day-to-day. I think really I coped with it by having weekends, honestly, because weeks were, they were awful, to be quite frank, just dealing with everything that comes with being treated for colorectal cancer. Latent stage colorectal cancer is really, really aggressive. So it gets treated really, really aggressively. And it took a toll on everyone and everything, really. So during the week, it was just trying to help out and trying to take care of things, and trying to make sure that my brother was okay and taken care of, and trying to make sure that I wasn't like disturbing my mom and that she had whatever she needed. She was resting a lot, especially at the beginning, because it just takes a lot of energy out of you. And so I would just escape on the weekends. Which is probably why I like traveling, getting out and seeing new places so much, because that was the only way I could deal, is I had to go see new things, even if it wasn't necessarily like new exciting places. All the time we would, I had a friend, and we would tell each other's moms like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna go, we'll go do this or we'll go do that. And sorry mom, if you're watching this. We would just kind of walk around, we would walk around the town and usually meet up with another friend. Every once in a while we would go to like bonfires and things. I don't know, like her mom would have beers or wine coolers or something. We would have one, like, oh, haha, look at us. And I don't know, just feeling like we were rebelling and doing like normal kid things on the weekends was really how I coped with it. That, and honestly doing theater. Like, I've never thought about how that lined up, because that's what I'm doing with my life now is theater, and I just happened to start it at that time in my life. And I think that's why I always thought of my middle school theater teacher, Alternicia Starr, Nisi, she's wonderful. I always thought of her as a second mom, because I had that regular support. Because not that my mom didn't support me, because she did, but she had other battles to fight. Like, she had to put her attention there, so it was nice to have that second escape. So really just escape. I keep saying it, but that's how I dealt with it, was just getting out, which sounds awful, because you should be there for your family when they're going through something, but sometimes you're there so much you just need a second of like me time. And maybe that's why I don't give myself me time. Maybe that's just my personality, but I have trouble like actually scheduling time to take care of myself, because I have this compulsion. I have to take care of everyone else around me, and so my needs fall by the wayside sometimes. And that was probably the climax of that, and that's why I needed the weekends so badly. Honestly, who it affected the biggest was probably my grandma, because we used to live really close to them. She's out in West Texas in a place called Baird that maybe 5 people have heard of ever, because that's all that lives there. But when we moved to the Mansfield-Burleson area, or just blanket Fort Worth, as my mom will still refer to it as, which drives me crazy, but that's a different matter. My grandma came up to help, because there was just a lot going on, especially in our household. I think how everyone deals with cancer and goes through cancer is different from patient to patient, because it affects each person differently. It's going to affect their family differently based on what your normal is. And our normal isn't the most normal. My brother, Ethan, I love him to death. He is my pride and joy. But he's on this autism spectrum. He has autism, he has ADHD, he has tic disorder. I believe there was another acronym that I just, for the life of me, don't know what it was. But so we weren't just considering what needed to be done to take care of general things around the house. It was like maximum overdrive. Like, we had to make sure that everything that my mom usually did, which I never would have realized how much that was, which was a lot. We had to make sure that that was all being taken care of, but also that Ethan could still be on his routine and that her medical needs were being taken care of, because going through chemotherapy, there are certain things that you have to do to keep up with yourself and try to keep yourself strong enough for the treatment, because the treatment is really, really aggressive. So she uprooted herself, my grandma, and she came and she lived with us while this was all going on. I don't know, she shared my bedroom, which is really fun because once again, this was middle school and early high school for me, which is already an awkward time to be a person, because it's like, hi, I'm a young preteen, early teen girl that doesn't really know what high school means. And now my grandma was sharing the room with me. So I didn't, of course, it was like I had to feel a lot of teen angst because I had no personal space. But she really sacrificed a lot to come up here with us. And I didn't think about it enough whenever I was younger because I really loved her. So I was just excited to have, like, oh my gosh, she's going to be up here with us. But they're not a high-income family, so that was really tough for them because she wasn't making a paycheck. She was just up here helping us. So that affected her really in a big way. I'm never entirely sure how much it affected Ethan. Because I know that we must have explained it to him, but I sometimes feel like we didn't. Because, I don't know, I was always so focused on, we tried to keep things normal, so I don't know how much he picked up on what was going on and how things were changing. I know that he did, but he's not the most talkative fella, so I don't know how much he went through. My stepdad, he was also in the house at the time. He was a nurse at Hughley, and it affected him in that he had 2 jobs at that point, because he was going in and working the night shift at the hospital and then coming back and dealing with his second patient, which was my mom, because there were just things to deal with and to be aware of. And but he understood all of the medical jargon, so that was great, because if it was just me and my mom trying to figure out what all of that was when she was going through it, I do not know how that would have gone, because I definitely not a medical person. I try to avoid the doctor's office as much as I can, so I don't think I could have handled all of the information. I would have tried, but I don't know that I could have kept up with the routine the way that he did. So that was nice to have. But yeah, just the whole family. It was weird. I remember that time, like, we're all living in the same house, of course, still. But it was really disjointed because I felt like it was a lot of tiptoeing. Because no one really talked about what was going on. Obviously, we were aware of it, but we didn't, even now, I don't think we ever really addressed everything that was going on. She would talk about, like, oh, this hurts, that hurts, this is affecting me, but we never talked about the full gravity of what was happening. I don't know that there was ever a true, like, sit down and absorb it, so much as, like, okay, this is our new normal and we're gonna move forward. So it was a really busy household, but a really delicate one. I think mostly affected just how I think about other people and what they're going through and their battles. I mean, of course, no one, whenever they're younger, really has enough respect for their mom, because that's just a general thing as humans. We don't understand the mother figure. Just seeing my mom hurt the way that she did really made me think about what other people are going through and what's happening to other people. I really don't know how much of it was the actual colon cancer and how much was the chemotherapy, because obviously neither are ideal. But there were a lot of a lot of side effects that just changed her daily life and how much she could do, what she was capable of. And it sucked to watch her because she really, I don't know, I wish that I remembered more of my mom before, because even though middle school's not terribly long ago, it was far enough away. I was so young before that I remember bits and pieces, but I also just have a really bad memory. So I don't necessarily have a full grasp on the situation. But she was a strong person. I know that. I know that from stories I've heard, at least. And just seeing how little she could do. And also, that was part of whenever we had to pick up some of the household duties, realizing how much she did and things that she couldn't do. Middle school is when I started consistently doing my own laundry because she got weak and she couldn't pick up the bins. So I started washing my stuff and whatever else needed washed, really. I learned how to cook. Weirdly enough, that's colon cancer that taught me how to cook, in a sense, because one of the agents in the chemotherapy used for colon cancer gives a side effect called cold sensitivity, which doesn't sound bad. Most people have some kind of cold sensitivity, like, oh, I won't bite into a popsicle because my teeth are cold sensitive. But it's so much more severe than that. She couldn't touch anything cold because it would give her a burning effect, like as though she was walking through a fire. She accidentally bumped into the freezer door one time getting something out. I remember distinctly, because I remember what it sounded like when she yelled, and I've never heard a person scream like that before. It was awful. I imagine that's what it would sound like if you were set on fire. It was awful. So, obviously she couldn't do a lot of... My mom makes a meatloaf, and it's a really good meatloaf, and we've always all really loved it in the family because, there's always that one home-cooked meal, and that was her meatloaf. And she couldn't make it, which sounds ridiculous, but she couldn't make it because she couldn't mix the meat. It was too cold, and it would burn her hands and her arms. So I started making it. So I guess it kind of taught me to cook, which is really weird. I've always been a people person. I've always liked helping people, but I think it really shaped a lot of the extent to which I will go for people, because everyone's fighting their own battles, and you never know what someone's going through. And I really took that to heart because I think everyone learns that lesson in some way or another at some point in their life, but it's like you can't assume someone's family life and someone's at-home life. You don't know what's happening on the other side of that. So it's made me a lot more sensitive to people. Anytime someone seems like they might be down or having a hard time, I try to make it a point to ask if they're okay. How are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Because I had people, but I wish that I had people that had been more willing to be there for me whenever that was happening, because it was a lot to see someone that's that close to you, that you see every day in your life, hurting that much. So I try to watch out, because you never know what someone's going home to, and you don't know what someone's trying to escape. Thinking about it, really, truly, I think she felt bad, which is ridiculous. But I really think she felt bad. I know she did. Because, I don't know, there were just... Anytime something would happen that she couldn't go to, or if we had to do something because she just couldn't, she was always just overly apologetic, and she felt like she was really holding us back, and she felt like a burden. And I think a lot of that comes from it's probably the most common side effect or symptom of people going through any kind of cancer is just depression and fatigue. And it's the fatigue, obviously, from your body trying to fight the thing that's trying to fight your body. And she was depressed. She was incredibly depressed. She couldn't do anything, and she felt awful about it because she was, strong warrior lady, you know? She took care of everything, and she wanted to make sure that things were taken care of and that we were taken care of. And she couldn't. And I think that crushed her. And I know it still crushes her because there's some things that she just can't do. She gets so frustrated because we'll ask her about something all the time, or we'll ask to do something, or I'll tell her something. Like I was doing theater, so I was going to rehearsals all the time, and I'd ask her if she could pick me up or give me a ride home. And chemotherapy is like, they're essentially pumping poison into you. So it kills the bad cells, but it also kills some of the good cells. And some of the good cells it killed were, honestly, some of her brain cells. And that's a thing a lot of people experience. It's referred to as chemo brain. So we tell her something and she'd just forget. She couldn't hold on to it. I know she felt bad, because I'd have to ask her several times for things like a ride, or once I started driving, even just asking, like, hey, I'm going to go to so-and-so's house, and then getting a call, and she's freaking out, asking, where are you? You're supposed to be home. And only for me to tell her, like, hey, you gave me permission 4 or 5 times. She felt awful, and she hated going through it. It was frustrating. She got frustrated all the time with it. She gets frustrated with it. She got frustrated with it then and now, too, financially. I mean, chemo's not something... rephrasing. Cancer's not something that you choose to have. It's not something that you seek out. But man, it costs like you do. It's expensive. It's expensive to try to fight cancer. It is. They make you pay so much money to have a chance to live. And like, I understand you need money for research. It can't be free, but it was detrimental. And she felt bad because there were things like school trips and things that people would go on we just couldn't afford, because all of our money we're paying medical bills and hospital stays and like the medicine for neuropathy pills and anything else, any plethora of things that you just end up paying for because it's expensive to go through cancer. And she felt awful for that. So I think it really crushed her in a lot of ways, going through the chemotherapy and the colon cancer and seeing us take care of her for going through it. She felt really bad all the time. She's better and she's not. There are a lot of really long-lasting effects. I mentioned the term neuropathy. That's nerve damage that you get from chemotherapy. It's primarily in your hands and your feet. So she has to take like 6 pills like twice a day to have any kind of feeling in her hands and feet. There are a lot of things about your life that are affected that aren't really reversible. You just can't change them once they're there. That's the new stasis. But it's been a few years now. Let's see, because if she was diagnosed when I was in middle school, and I know this last year was supposed to be the 5-year mark, that means it was 3 years of cancer treatments and chemotherapy. That's definitely going to have long-term effects on your body. It's a lot of strain. She gets tired really easily. But it also, there were some positive effects. It's weird to think of that because cancer is all in all a negative thing. It's really negative in everything that it does. People always try to search for a really big, like, there's a beam of light at the end of this and it's gonna make you a better person for your suffering, and I don't really necessarily think that it does. Really the only positive effect I can remember it having was she left the job that she was at, which she really needed to, because the guy that she was working for was a jerk. I will never forget him, Dr. Hirschman. I hope you see this. Coming for you. It was, I remember it very distinctly because she was working there, and I mean, my mom was in the medical field. She was an X-ray tech, so she wasn't necessarily dealing with like surgical cases or like cancer or anything, but she knew the signs. She admitted it to me before. She said that she knew that she had cancer a long time before she went to have it checked out. Actually, she didn't really ever voluntarily go to have it checked out. She didn't want to be a burden, which is ridiculous. But she was at work and she passed out because her body was just going through so much, because you know, at that point, she's gone past the early stages and it's advanced to latent stage colorectal cancer, and it took a toll on her body and she passed out. They called an ambulance and took her, because she was working at like a private office, not in an ER. They didn't transport her from ambulance to hospital. That's weird. But they took her to the hospital and they ended up finding out that she had cancer through I think whenever they were testing something and they just stumbled upon it, and she's like, oh yeah, I knew, which, my mother, crazy. But I remember she was working there and she tried to go back because she didn't want to stop. She wanted to keep pushing through, and she wanted to try to keep things normal, and she wanted to live a really normal life, even though she was going through these treatments. And I remember, because she told me when she came home that he called her into his office. She sat down across the desk from this man, this coward, and he told her that her chemotherapy was really inconvenient for him and that she just got cancer at a bad time for his schedule. So she left. She has a slightly better appreciation for the things around her, but she loved life before, so I don't know that it had the big rainbow sunshine on the other side effect that people search for in a cancer story, because you just feel better thinking that maybe they went through this for a reason, and maybe all the suffering was for something better, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes that's just life. I mean, it just comes through, and that's your new normal. This was gonna be 5 years cancer-free, which is a big milestone. Anyone that has been affected by cancer knows that. They know the 5-year mark, because that's when it's you're officially, like, you're actually cancer-free. Until then, you're considered in remission. And I remember she was talking about it, and I noticed she had like a little bump, like right about there, and I remember asking her what that was. She said, oh, I'm gonna get it checked out, but it's nothing big, it's nothing big. And next time I saw her, it was bigger, because at this point I'm in college, so I was only seeing her every once in a while, so it was significantly larger. And I remember asking her, well, what did the doctor say? She's like, I'm gonna get it checked out. That was, I think we argued over that for most of the year. She finally went and got it checked out earlier this year, and actually it was over the summer, because I remember my grandma, who had since since going through coming down and helping us while my mom was going through the chemotherapy, had moved back to Baird, and she's working, which is weird because grandparents usually don't work, but she works because, once again, cancer is expensive. But I remember she called me during her lunch break, and she was bawling because it was cancerous, the spot. And I remember crying too. I cried a lot because we just gotten through it, and I remember I was scared because I knew that I couldn't be there for her this time because I'm here. And some people, they have medical emergencies in their family and they'll stop going to school and they'll go back to be with them. And it's like, there's no way. She would never let me do that. And honestly, I couldn't do that to her because as bad as she felt the first time when we really didn't change a whole lot about our routine, she would never have let me do that. I remember I was terrified because I wasn't sure how much of it was cancer or how much was the chemotherapy that the negative effects were being caused by. But she was convinced that at least 90% of it was the chemotherapy because of how bad it hurt. And I remember after my grandma called, I called her and asked her about it. And she said, yeah, they're gonna talk to me and we're gonna discuss treatment options, but I'm not doing chemotherapy again. And if it kills me, it kills me. And that really affects a person. That was terrifying because I thought, we just made it through this long haul and I'm still gonna end up losing my mom because she just couldn't handle it twice. So that was awful. And that's where things are now. I mean, she went and got it all checked out. They did the biopsy and they ended up doing surgery to remove the mass. And the last update that I've received, they believe they got it all. Her face is really swollen and she has a giant scar from here to here now because it pretty much enveloped her face. We're hoping that nothing else pops up and restarting the count. So 5 years from now, hopefully we'll be celebrating a little bit more.